Hello everyone, welcome to IPM IAS Academy's another session on modern Indian history and its detailed timeline. My name is Gawthaman. I'm the academic head at IPM IAS Academy. So I hope today's session will be useful for you. So let's see what are the important points we are going to discuss in this session. Okay, before that, I would like to tell you about the importance of timelines, understanding the timelines. So every time, if you have a control over the timelines or the chronology that happened in the history, that will definitely help you in multiple subjects, not only in history. It will help you in political science, it will be helping you in geography, so in economics it will help you. So in all areas it has its own reflections. So make sure that you have a very clear idea about the timelines that happened in our country. Okay, so that is what I'm going to tell you. So today it's a detailed timeline discussion, and while we are discussing about the detailed timelines also, you can see some of the incidents or some of the events are missing. So don't worry about it. Try to understand about it in a very easy manner. So in the last session, we were discussing about the timelines only, but major points, major incidents we have covered. So that will become your magnets for actually studying the other important events. Okay. So now you have milestones. So at least you know around 4 to 5 events in 1600 to 1700, then 1700 to 1800. So you have that idea. That will definitely help you to understand more about the timelines in today's session. Okay, so if you have not yet watched the last class, please go back and watch that class and then come for this particular session, because that will be really helpful for you. Okay, so let us start our session. So modern Indian history. Okay, modern Indian history. So let us start with the English occupation only. So the establishment of English East India Company. So 1600. Okay, 1600 only the establishment of the East India Company happened. So you know about how the East India Company was formed. East India Company was a private company, and it got its charter from Queen Elizabeth I on December 31st, 1600, and it gave the company the autonomy to do its trade in the eastern part of the world. So this marked the beginning of British commercial interest in India, which would later evolve into political dominance. So one thing that you need to understand is, when we are talking about the English East India Company, we are not going to talk about the British Crown or the British government. So don't confuse it with the British government. East India Company is a separate entity, that is a private company. It has no connection with the government. You have to have that idea. Then the next event is happening in 1608. That is the arrival of the first English ship at Surat. Very important. English ship at Surat. So they are actually operating their activities here. The Captain William Hawkins arrived at Surat aboard the Hector, and initiating the official contract between the English and the Mughal Empire. So basically, during that time, who was actually controlling the entire India? It was actually under the control of the Mughals. So they have to get permission from Mughal rulers to do this trade and all. Okay, so they were starting those kinds of contacts. Though initially unsuccessful in securing firm trading rights, they set the stage for future diplomatic and commercial engagement. So basically, you can see that in 1608, they have actually started their work towards establishing their trade in this country, and they have approached the Mughals also, but initially it was an unsuccessful attempt, but later it became successful. We know that. Okay, how they got the control of trade in India and all. We have a clear-cut idea about it. Now, another important event is happening in 1611. Okay, the establishment of the English factory at Masulipatanam. Okay, so the question is, where is Masulipatanam? It is actually present-day Andhra Pradesh. You can see the Masulipatanam, and the English East India Company set up its first factory in South India at Masulipatanam, and this was a significant in expanding British trade along the Coromandel coast. So basically, they are starting their trade in the Indian regions, especially in the southern part, that is in the Andhra Pradesh regions, and they have started it in the Masulipatanam. Okay, the first factory at Masulipatanam. So these years are really important. 1608, they were trying to establish their contact with the Mughal rulers, and 1611 they have established their first factory at Masulipatanam. Now in 1612, Battle of Swali. Okay, in other words, it is called as Suvali. The English defeated the Portuguese at the naval battle of Swali near Surat, demonstrating their maritime strength. So before Britishers came here, you know that other European powers were also here. the Portuguese were there, the French were there, the Dutch were there. So all these people were there. So in order to establish the monopoly over the Indian territory, they have to defeat these forces also. And the first one of that that kind of a conflict was with the Portuguese, and that is known as the Battle of Swali. This victory helped them gain trading privileges from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Okay, so during that time, who was the Mughal Emperor? Jahangir was the Mughal Emperor, and they got their right to do their trade in India from Jahangir. So that was in the year 1612. Okay, Battle of Swali. It was actually under the control of Portuguese, and it is actually near to Surat. In 1615, okay, Sir Thomas Roe's mission to Jahangir's court. Now, they wanted to establish their official, contact with the Mughal emperor. So that's what happened. Sir Thomas Roe's mission to Jahangir's court. Sir Thomas Roe arrived at the ambassador of the King James, as the ambassador of the King James I to Emperor Jahangir's court, and successfully negotiated for trade rights. Okay, so that was a success for them. They have successfully established their trade rights in India. They got the permission from Jahangir, and his diplomacy led to the establishment of the permanent English factories in India. So this became a milestone event. They got the official authority or the official permission from the Mughal emperor himself, and they started their establishment, and it led to the construction of various factories and various industrial settlements in India. Okay, that happened in the year 1615. Now, 1616, the foundation of Danish settlement at Tranquebar. So the Danish had established their first Indian settlement at Tranquebar on the Coromandel coast. Though not as influential as other European powers, Denmark's presence added to the complex colonial landscape. So basically, India was known for its splendor and prestige, its rich natural resources and all, and this has attracted them to come here. That's why all these colonial European powers, they came to India, and they are actually competing with each other to get that control over India. So same like that happened to Denmark also. Denmark also foundation of their settlement in Tranquebar happened in 1616. So in the year 1620, the establishment of Danish factory at Serampore. Okay, the Danes have extended their foothold by setting up a factory at Serampore near present-day Kolkata, contributing to the multinational trade competition in Bengal. So now India is becoming a hub for multinational trade war. Okay, you can see the presence of Portuguese here, French here, then Dutch here, then British here. So all these people were competing. So that kind of a conflict is actually going on. So this is important. Now, in 1620, the Dutch has actually established their factory at Serampore. Okay. Now, in 1612, the English obtained firman for trade in Bengal. Okay, that is also another important milestone event. So they got the firman. So the English East India Company received a firman, that is a royal decree, from Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, permitting them to trade in Bengal. So they are now getting access to Bengal also. This was a major boost to British trade expansion in eastern India. So already we have mentioned it in various classes. Bengal was a very important territory during that time period. So getting the permission to do trade in Bengal is really, really important for any European power. So that is what they got in 1632 from the Mughal emperor. And then comes 1639, that is the foundation of Madras, that is the present day Chennai. The English East India Company acquired land from the local Nayak rulers and founded Madras Pattanam, leading to the construction of Fort St. George. This settlement became a vital center of British operations in South India. So if you go back to the Indian freedom struggle, you know that there are various presidencies or the provinces, really big provinces. One is Bombay, one is Madras, one is Bengal and all. So now you can see that they have already established their influence or their presence in the Bengal region. Now they are expanding their presence in the southern part of India, that is the Madras region. Okay, they have set up their Fort St. George, the construction of Fort St. George in the Madras region. Now, in 1640s, the growing competition among the European powers. So that was a very tough time for the European powers, because now who is going to take over the power? who is having more authority in this region, who is having an upper hand over trade in Indian territory. So this became a question for the conflict. And during the 1640s, the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and English and the Danes were all vying for commercial dominance in India. And this competition laid the foundation for future colonial struggles that would shape India's modern history. So you know who succeeded in all these the conflicts. It was the Britishers ultimately succeeded in that. That is the reason why we were actually under the clutches of Britishers for more than 200 years, and we were actually fighting against them to get the freedom. Okay, so 1640s very, very crucial time period for the European powers. Now, in 1656, the Aurangzeb becomes the governor of the Deccan. Aurangzeb, you know, Aurangzeb was a very, efficient ruler of the Mughal Empire, and Aurangzeb becomes the governor of Bengal, not the emperor of the Mughals, but the governor of Deccan. And Aurangzeb, the Mughal prince, was appointed as the viceroy of the Deccan by his father Shah Jahan. His experience here deepened his understanding of southern India, which would later influence his Deccan campaigns as emperor. Okay, so Aurangzeb's campaigns, the Deccan campaigns, had its influence from this particular appointment as the governor of the Deccan in 1656. And in 1658, Aurangzeb seizes the Mughal throne. Okay, so within 2 years, you could see that Aurangzeb defeated his brothers Dara Shikoh, Murad, and the Shah Shuja in a bitter war of succession, and he imprisoned Shah Jahan and crowned himself the emperor, marking the beginning of his long and controversial reign. Okay, it was a very long and controversial reign for the Aurangzeb, because it started from 1658. He imprisoned his father himself, Shah Jahan, and he crowned himself as the emperor, and they started the rule. In 1661, Bombay is gifted to the British. Okay, another important milestone. As part of the dowry of Catherine Braganza, the Portuguese handed over Bombay to the British Crown, which later transferred it to the East India Company. This event laid the foundation for Bombay's emergence as a major colonial port city. Okay, so Bombay was actually gifted to the British by the Portuguese, because Portuguese were controlling the Bombay regions, and as a dowry of Catherine of Braganza, they have actually handed over this particular territory to Britain. And you know the importance of Bombay now, and it's a very important port for the Indian trade. Okay, so it actually grown as a major colonial port city. Okay, after this particular incident. Then in 1664, Shivaji establishes the Maratha Navy and conducts the Surat raid. So now you know about the Maratha Empire. Maratha Empire was established by Shivaji, and the Maratha Navy was actually established by Shivaji, and Shivaji led a bold raid in the wealthy Mughal port city of Surat, asserting the Maratha strength. So that shows the might of the Marathas. And this move showcases growing challenge to Mughal authority in Western India. So the Mughals understood that this person is going to become a headache for them, because he is showing his military might, or his efficiency in ruling and everything. He's actually showcasing, and he become a threat for the Mughals. In 1665, Treaty of Purandar happened. What is Treaty of Purandar? Shivaji was forced to sign the Treaty of Purandar with the Mughal general Jai Singh first, ceding 23 forts. However, he cleverly used the situation to regroup and reassert the Maratha power later. So now you may think that, okay, Shivaji was defeated and Shivaji was actually surrendering his territory to the Mughal Empire. No, actually that was a preparation time for him, and he actually proved to the entire world that the Maratha Empire is really, really supreme. Okay, so that we will see in the later part. Okay, so Treaty of Purandar is happening in the year 1665. Now, in 1666, Shivaji's visit to the Mughal court and escape from Agra. So Shivaji visited the Mughal court. He was actually invited to Aurangzeb's court in Agra, but was placed under house arrest. Okay, so he was invited and he was actually placed under house arrest, but he cleverly, escaped from that, and from that event onwards, he tried to restore his reputation as a daring and unyielding leader. So from 1666, the entire situation changed. Maratha Empire became more and more strengthened. Shivaji's power, Shivaji's name, fame, everything actually grown. In 1674, coronation of Shivaji as the Chhatrapati. Okay, because now we are addressing Shivaji as Chhatrapati Shivaji. So when did this happen? It was in the year 1674. Coronation of Shivaji as Chhatrapati happened, and Shivaji formally declared his sovereignty by getting crowned as the Chhatrapati of the Maratha kingdom at Raigad. Okay, so Maratha kingdom's Chhatrapati is now Shivaji in the year 1674, and this marked the rise of a significant Hindu kingdom opposing Mughal hegemony. Okay, so now it became a real headache for the Mughals, and now they are struggling. Okay, the Mughals are struggling, and we know what happened later. What happened? Shivaji was fighting against some Shivaji's, followers were successors were fighting against the Mughals. Or they have actually created a tough situation, a tough struggle for the Mughals in the southern part of the country, in the Deccan regions. Now, in 1670, what happened was it is the death of Shivaji. Shivaji's death marked a turning point in the Maratha struggle, creating a temporary vacuum in leadership. However, his legacy and administrative structure kept the Maratha power intact. So, the history of Shivaji is still relevant in the country. So that was relevant after his death also. So when there was a power vacuum emerged, that legacy he has created actually kept that Maratha power intact. So in 1681 to 1707, that is very, very important, because that was a very crucial time for the Mughal Empire, because Aurangzeb had his Deccan campaigns during this time period. Aurangzeb had his Deccan campaigns during this time period. Aurangzeb personally led prolonged military campaigns in the Deccan against the Marathas, Adil Shahis and Qutub Shahis. These wars drained the Mughal treasury and overextended the empire. So very, very important. So 81 to 1707, more than 20 years he is actually spending his time, energy, money, everything for these Deccan campaigns. If you have watched the recent movie, Chhawa, so it is actually talking about this Aurangzeb Deccan campaigns only. So it's a very clear example of how he spent a lot of time for the Deccan campaigns. From 1686 to 1687, annexation of Bijapur and Golconda. Very important. Okay, so Deccan campaign we already mentioned. So that is what is happening. Aurangzeb successfully annexed the sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda, completing the Mughal conquest of the Deccan. And while this expanded the empire territorially, it intensified local resistance and instability. So that's very important. In the Deccan, they are trying to establish their power, but still they are getting a lot of resistance from the local people. Okay, so because they were inspired by many other rulers, especially Maratha Empire is an example for all of them. So they were actually fighting against these Mughals during that time. So that was happening in the year 1686 to 1687. Okay, Deccan campaign time period only. Now, in 1701, decline of the Mughal central authority begins. So Mughals decline or disintegration starting in this particular time period only. After Aurangzeb's long and costly Deccan campaigns, the centralized control of the Mughal empire started weakening. Very important, because he spent a lot of time, lot of energy, lot of money, and financially they were drained only for this Deccan campaigns, because they were having a lot of resistance from the Deccan region. So it was not easy for them. So they have to spend a lot of time and money for it. So this actually weakened the empire. The imperial administration became increasingly ineffective, paving the way for regional powers to assert autonomy. So what will happen if you do not have enough money, if you do not have that proper power and that military authority, then definitely those people who are actually under your control will start getting their own freedom. They will think for their own freedom, because they knew that, okay, this empire is not good enough to hold the entire territory. Okay, so we are not going to be a part of this empire now. So this is what many leaders have taken their decision, and that is what the imperial administration became increasingly ineffective. It actually paved the way for regional powers to assert autonomy. Okay, now a major incident in the history of Mughal Empire happened, that is the death of Aurangzeb. 1707. Aurangzeb's death marked the end of the last powerful Mughal emperor. So he was a very powerful leader, and you know that he actually ruled for almost around 50 years. Okay, so very powerful leader. He tried to establish the entire Mughal empire in different parts of the country, especially the Deccan regions, because till then Deccan was not known to them, or it was not, influential for them. So after the time of Aurangzeb only, or during the time of Aurangzeb only, they have established their control over these Deccan regions. Okay, Aurangzeb's death marked the end of last powerful Mughal emperor. It triggered a war of succession and accelerated the fragmentation of the empire, leading to the rise of provincial kingdoms. So this is for sure, because now Mughal empire is not small; it is very large. If you take the territorial extent, it is very large. And now, who is going to succeed? That become a war. That become a question. Okay. Now, in 1713, the ascension of Farrukhsiyar as the Mughal emperor. Farrukhsiyar ascended the Mughal throne with the support of the powerful Said brothers. Okay, the Said brothers had helped the Farrukhsiyar to ascend the Mughal throne. His reign marked a period of factionalism and growing influence of kingmakers, weakening imperial authority further. So you know that during the time of Aurangzeb, he was the only person who was going to decide on various things. But now, when kingmakers are coming, not only the kingmakers are also coming, like a lot of diplomats or people who are really shrewd, like the Said brothers. Now the factionalism will emerge. Okay, so that will be an imbalanced situation for the ruler. This is what happened because of the growing influence of the kingmakers. The imperial authority got weakened. Now in 1717, okay, the firman to the British East India Company was given. The Farrukhsiyar issued a firman granting the East India Company duty-free trade rights in Bengal, Hyderabad, and Gujarat. Now, Mughals have established their power in almost every part of India. Now, it is easy for them to give permission for the East India Company. So that is what they have done. They have issued the firman. Then this firman gave the company significant economic leverage and laid the groundwork for British expansion. Then in 1720, the fall of Said brothers. Said brothers, we already discussed, the kingmakers who supported the Farrukhsiyar. So fall of Said brothers is another important event that happened. That is, the Said brothers, who had been the de facto rulers of the Mughal court, were assassinated by rival factions. Okay, their fall marked a shift in power to the Turani and Irani nobles and reflected the ongoing chaos within the Mughal polity. So now, already during the time of Farrukhsiyar, the empire got weakened, emergence of more kingmakers and all, factionalism emerged, and as a result of that, these Said brothers were killed. And now another important power shift is happening, and to Turani and Irani nobles. Okay, so it reflected the ongoing chaos within the Mughal empire or the Mughal polity. Now, in 1724, Nizam ul Mulk establishes Hyderabad. Okay, Nizam ul Mulk declared autonomy from the Mughal empire. So they were all part of the Mughal empire because of the Deccan campaigns and all. Now, when the Mughal empire disintegrated, the Nizam ul Mulk declared its autonomy from the Mughal empire and founded the state of Hyderabad in the Deccan. Though nominally a Mughal vassal, Hyderabad became an independent regional state. So it was actually a Mughal vassal only, but what happened was later, because of the involvement of Nizam ul Mulk, it became an independent regional power. And you know what happened later also, because during the time of our independence, during the time of the reorganization of the states and all, we were actually struggling because of this state. Hyderabad was against the union, the Indian Union. So all those things you know. Now, 1737, the Maratha invasion of Delhi. Okay, under Bajirao I, the Marathas raided the Delhi and forced the Mughal court into submission. Okay, Marathas raided Delhi and forced the Mughal court into submission. This signified the growing power of the Marathas and the declining prestige of the Mughal. So just imagine, once a powerful empire in the country is actually weakened and they were defeated, by the regional power called Marathas. So what it signifies? It signifies the weakening of the Mughal Empire, and it signifies the strength of the Maratha Empire. In 1739, invasion of Nadir Shah happened. The Persian ruler Nadir Shah invaded India, defeated the Mughals at Karnal, and sacked Delhi. He took immense wealth, including the Peacock Throne, further diminishing Mughal prestige and power. So, first, the Marathas defeated them. Now, the Nadir Shah, the Persian ruler, defeated them, and not only defeat, they took immense wealth from the Mughal Empire. Then in 1740, the death of Bajirao I. Bajirao I was a dynamic ruler of the Marathas, and he died in the year 1740, and ending an era of aggressive Maratha expansion under his leadership. And his campaigns had significantly weakened Mughal authority across India. We have seen that because Mughals were first defeated by the Bajirao I only. So when he died, so it actually became a problem time for the Marathas. Okay. Now, 1748, the death of Emperor Muhammad Shah. Muhammad Shah's death triggered a fresh succession crisis, further destabilizing the Mughal Empire. His reign had seen multiple invasions and internal rebellions, accelerating the imperial decline. So, after the Aurangzeb time period, it was actually a disintegration for the entire Mughal period. The Mughal Empire got really disintegrated. Okay, they were weakened. Okay, at all levels they were weakened. So that is what is happening after 1748. Also, after the death of Muhammad Shah, it was actually a succession crisis. Okay, now 1751, the Battle of Arcot. The Battle of Arcot. So here comes the name Robert Clive. Okay, the Robert Clive captured Arcot, the capital of Carnatic. So it is their establishment in the southern regions. Okay, South Indian territory, marking a turning point in the Anglo-French rivalry in South India. So it was actually under the control of the French. So French were also having their own interest in the region. Now Robert Clive, as a representative of the British East India Company, is trying to capture the region. So it becomes a crucial turning point in the Anglo-French rivalry. This victory enhanced the British prestige and laid the foundation for future territorial expansion in the region. So they were not only rivals in India, they were rivals in Europe also, because both are colonial powers. So they wanted to establish their territory. So this is what happened in India. They had their own vested interests, and it conflicted, and the Battle of Arcot happened. Robert Clive was victorious in that. Now, the most important aspect, that is the 1757, that is the Battle of Plassey. We have clearly discussed about the Battle of Plassey in the last video, so you should go and watch that video. So Battle of Plassey was between the British East India Company led by Robert Clive and the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj ud Dawla. So Siraj ud Dawla was having a very large army, but still he was defeated in the battle because of traitors. We can say that he was cheated in the battle by his own commanders, his own associates. He was cheated, and that's the reason why he was defeated in the battle. And with this Battle of Plassey, they got complete authority over the Bengal region, and now they are supreme. The Britishers are supreme. They have control over Bombay, they have control over Madras, they have control over the Bengal regions also. Now, in 1761, the third Battle of Panipat happened. The third Battle of Panipat. What is it? The Marathas were decisively defeated by Ahmad Shah Abdali in one of the bloodiest battles in the Indian history, and the loss significantly weakened Maratha power and created a political vacuum in the North India also, because Marathas, they have tried to establish their power in the northern regions also, and here Ahmad Shah Abdali defeated the Maratha Empire, which became a problematic phase for the Marathas in India, especially in the southern regions and also in the northern regions. In 1764, Battle of Buxar happened. Okay, the East India Company was actually doing their job. They got the control over this region, and they were trying to do their exploitative rule in the Indian territory, especially in the Bengal territory, and they tried to interfere in the internal affairs of the ruler there. So the ruler, the Nawab of Bengal, was not happy with their intervention in their affairs, the internal affairs, and this actually caused the the Battle of Buxar. On the one side, you could see that the Nawab of Bengal, Nawab of Awadh, and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II on one side, and on the other side, you could see the British East India Company. But unfortunately, the Indian forces were defeated. Okay, 1764. Now, 1765, the Treaty of Allahabad. So after the Battle of Buxar, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II granted the Diwani a right to collect revenue of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa to the East India Company. This officially acknowledged the company's role as a sovereign power in India. Now, they are having a complete control over the Diwani rights. Diwani means the right to collect the revenue. So that is the biggest source of income for any government. So if you take our present government also, from where they are getting the money, it is from the taxes only. So that tax collection rights they are getting, the East India Company is getting from the Mughal ruler. So that strengthened their power in the region. 1765. In 1772, Warren Hastings becomes the governor of Bengal. Warren Hastings becomes the governor of Bengal. So this has to be very clear, governor of Bengal. He initiated administrative and judicial reforms to consolidate the British rule in Bengal. He also began the process of codifying the Hindu and Muslim laws and centralized revenue collection. So he has come up with various initiatives as the governor of Bengal, because governor of Bengal was very powerful than the governor of Madras and governor of Bombay during that particular time. And during that time only, another important rule is coming, that is the Regulating Act of 1773. The British Parliament passed this act to regulate the affairs of the East India Company and establish centralized British authority in India. It created the office of Governor General and a Supreme Court in Calcutta. So very, very important, because till then it was the British East India Company, a private company is actually taking care of the affairs of India. Now, the British government thought that now this is not correct, because whatever they are doing is not correct also. There were a lot of, dissatisfaction from the Indian community, and also there is a lot of maladministration, corruption, everything is happening from the company side. So now we need to regulate them. That is the reason why they have come up with the Regulating Act. The British Parliament passed this act, and with that they have created a post called as the Governor General of Bengal. It was Governor of Bengal till then, and now it was the Governor General of Bengal, and the first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings only. And they have also established the Supreme Court in Calcutta. Then comes the 1782, the Treaty of Selbai happened, the Treaty of Selbai. This treaty ended the first Anglo-Maratha War and established peace between the British and the Marathas. So Marathas and the British forces were conflicting, and the war happened, the first Anglo-Maratha War, and it ended with this particular treaty, Treaty of Selbai. It allowed the British to retain control over Salsette and ensured the Marathas would not support Hyder Ali of Mysore. So now, another major problem is with the regional powers. Maratha is one regional power. Another major power is the Mysore Sultan, that is the Hyder Ali. Okay, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, both these people are there. So they have ensured that the Marathas should not support the Hyder Ali. If they are supporting, if they are joined together, then definitely it is easy for them to defeat the British forces. Now, 1784, that is the Pitt's India Act. After the Regulating Act, Pitt's India Act came, and the British government took greater control of the East India Company affairs by creating a board of control. Okay, initially they have started with the title Governor General of Bengal. Now, with the Pitt's India Act, they have come up with something called as Board of Control, and this marked the beginning of the dual control, the company administration supervised by the British government. Okay, so Pitt's India Act is also very, very important. Then 1790 to 1792, that was the time of the Third Anglo-Mysore War. The British forces allied with the Marathas and the Nizam defeated Tipu Sultan of Mysore. So earlier there were rivalry, there were wars happening between the Mysore and the Britishers. So it was Hyder Ali who was actually leading those wars, and Hyder Ali was victorious. Always he was victorious. But during the time of the Tipu Sultan, because of the sophisticated weapons they used, the strategy they have adopted, Tipu Sultan was defeated in this particular war. That is the Third Anglo-Mysore War. The Treaty of Seringapatanam forced Tipu to cede half of his kingdom, marking a significant British victory in South India. So now the half of the provinces or the territory which were coming under the control of the Tipu Sultan were ceded to the British Empire. That was a great victory for the Britishers. Now, 1799, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War and the death of Tipu Sultan. Okay, 1799. Tipu Sultan died defending his capital Srirangapatna against the British forces led by Lord Wellesley. Lord Wellesley was the person behind this, the last Anglo-Mysore War, or the death of Tipu Sultan. This ended Mysore's resistance to British rule and consolidated British power in southern India. Okay, so Marathas, with Marathas they were having an agreement right now, and with the Mysore kingdom, they have actually defeated them. So both these people, Hyder Ali is not there now, Tipu Sultan is also not there. So with 1799, they have established their power in the southern region. Now, the Treaty of Bassein. The British East India Company signed the Treaty of Bassein with Bajirao II. Bajirao II is belonging to the Maratha Empire, the Peshwa of the Marathas, and this gave the British a foothold in the Maratha region and triggered the Second Anglo-Maratha War. Now, initially they have had an agreement with the Marathas, and they ensured that they were not joining hands with the Mysore kingdom, and now they are trying to attack the Marathas. Okay, so that is a Treaty of Bassein. And 1803-1805 time period is the Second Anglo-Maratha War. The British defeated the key Maratha powers such as the Scindia and the Bhosle, and significantly weakening the Maratha influence. This led to British supremacy over much of India's political landscape. Now, on the one side, they have defeated the Mysore Empire, and on the other side, you could see that they have defeated the Marathas also. Now, they are having an upper hand in the southern and the Deccan region. Okay, very, very important to understand. The Second Anglo-Maratha War happened 1803 to 1805. Now, another major act came from the Parliament is the Charter Act of 1813. And with the Charter Act of 1813, the British government ended the East India Company's monopoly over Indian trade. Okay, till then they were enjoying the monopoly over Indian trade, and now they have actually restricted that. They ended it. Except for the tea and trade with China, they have actually removed all other rights. It also allowed Christian missionaries to enter India, marking a cultural and educational shift. So, Christian missionaries is coming to India. They are coming up with the English education. Then many other, conversions and many other initiatives they have come up with. So that is happening during this particular time period. Then 1817 to 1818, the Third Anglo-Maratha War, and this war resulted in the final defeat of the Maratha Confederacy and ending the Maratha resistance to British rule. The British annexed the large territories and emerged as the paramount power in India. So by 1818, they made sure that India is completely under their control. By 1757, with the Battle of Plassey, they have got the authority of Bengal, and Bombay they have got it as a gift, as a dowry. And now the Madras region and also the Mysore regions and the Deccan regions, they got the authority through their activities, their campaigns. Okay, now 1824 to 1826, the Anglo-Burmese War. Now they are extending their authority, extending their territory. So Anglo-Burmese War, you know about Myanmar. So Myanmar is on the eastern side of India. So this war was fought between the British and the Burmese Empire due to disputes in Assam and Manipur. Okay, the British victory led to the Treaty of Yendabo and annexation of parts of northeast India. Very important. So Myanmar is the new name for Burma. So Burma was actually defeated by the Britishers, and they got the northeastern region under their control. Now another major incident is happening in the year 1829, that is the abolition of sati, a remarkable event in the socio-religious movements in India. So abolition of sati was actually done by Governor General Lord William Bentinck, and he was actually the Governor General during that time. And what was this sati? It was actually burning of widows. Okay, burning of widows, and through a legislation they have ended this. And he was inspired by, or he was actually motivated by, he was driven by an Indian reformer only, that was Rajaram Mohan Roy. He was the person behind this abolition of sati, but it was executed through the activities or actions of the Governor General, that is William Bentinck. 1829. Now, 1833, that is another important Charter Act. 1813 Charter Act, we have seen that they have restricted they've ended their trade rights of British East India Company's trade rights. And with the Charter Act of 1833, the Act centralized legislative powers and introduced administrative reforms, making the Governor General of Bengal the Governor General of India. So you could see that transformation. In 1773, it was before 1773, that is 1772 or not, it was Governor of Bengal. 1773 with the regulating and it was Governor General of Bengal. Now in 1833, you could see that the Governor General of Bengal becomes Governor General of India. It also attempted to open civil services to Indians through implementation, though implementation lacked. So that was their idea, but it didn't happen. Then 1835, the English Education Act, Lord Macaulay Minutes on education led to the adoption of English as a medium of instruction. This paved the way for the new class of English educated Indians key to future nationalist movements. Very important, because Britishers were actually ruling us, and one of their major resistance, one of their major problem or crisis area is the language they were using. So the language should be there for communication. So the people on the other side should understand what they are actually speaking. Then only the communication is proper. So in order to make it more smooth, they have introduced the English education in India, and that was through Lord Macaulay's Minutes, 1835. In 1837, revolt in Afghanistan happened. The first Anglo-Afghan war begins. Afghan War. Afghanistan was always considered as a buffer state between the Tsarist Russia and the British Empire. The British feared that the Russian influence in the Central Asia led to intervention in Afghanistan. So the war ended disastrously in 1842, highlighting the limits of British imperial expansion. So basically, the Britishers were not able to defeat them. Okay, they were not able to capture this region. So it actually showcased the limits of the British imperial expansion. So why Afghanistan? Because after Afghanistan, if you look at the map, you can see that after Afghanistan, it is a territory of Russia, the Russian Empire. So Britishers were actually having that fear that they can come to India. So that is the reason why they always kept this as a buffer state, and they try to capture this region. Then 1843, annexation of Sindh happened. The British defeated the Thalpur rulers in the Battle of Miani and annexed the Sindh under their General Charles Napier. It extended British control over the Western India and improved access to strategic ports. So now you see the picture, the entire picture. The first day, they started with the North Indian region, then the Central Indian regions, then the Southern, the Deccan regions, and then the Eastern regions now. And now they are moving to the Western region. That is why they annexed the Sindh, okay, the Sindh regions. 1843. In 1845 to 1846, you could see the Anglo-Sikh War. So they are concentrating on this region right now. The British clashed with the Sikh Empire following the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and after several battles, the Treaty of Lahore was signed, weakening Sikh power and transferring key territories to British. So now British is actually establishing their power in the Western region. So if you look at our map, now you can see that British is everywhere. Okay, that is what is happening. So towards the western side, they were actually moving. 1845 to 46. 1853, the introduction of railways in India. Okay, a remarkable event that happened in the development of this country, that is the railways. The first passenger railway in India was inaugurated between Bombay and Thane, marking the beginning of railway development under the British rule. You know, they have actually introduced all these things for their own benefit, but ultimately, to a later stage, it was actually beneficial for us also. This enhanced the colonial control and boosted the resource extraction, but also laid a foundation for future national integration. Okay, so they must have looked at it from the perspective of their own benefits, but actually it contributed to Indian nationalism also. Okay, now 1857 revolt, because of the rule of the East India Company, because of their exploitative rule, people were highly dissatisfied. The introduction of the doctrine of lapse principle by Lord Dalhousie, the introduction of English education, widow remarriage, all these things affected the people of this country, and even some aspects actually triggered their religious sentiments also. One was the use of greased cartridges by the soldiers. So all these affected or ended up in the revolt of 1857, also known as the First War of Indian Independence. So it was a widespread but ultimately unsuccessful uprising against the British rule, sparked by military grievances and broader socio-economic discontent. It led to the end of East India Company's rule and the beginning of direct crown administration. So it actually showcased the weakness of the East India Company, and it also showcased the weakness and also the mal rule or the corrupted rule of the East India Company, which led to the transfer of power. Okay, basically from British East India Company, the British Crown took over the power. So during the time of 1857 revolt only, we were introduced to many leaders like the Kunwar Singh, like the Tandya Topi, then the Rani Lakshmi Bhai. Okay, so all these people were active leaders during this time period. Wajid Ali Shah, then the Mughal empire, Mughal rulers. All these people were really involved in the 1857 revolt. Okay, now 1858, that is the Government of India Act 1858, and following the 1857 revolt, the British understood that now this is the time to end the British East India Company's rule here, and the British Crown assumed direct control over India through this act, ending the company's rule. Viceroy replaced the Governor General, and a new India office was created in London. Okay, 1858. Now 1861, that the Indian Councils Act of 1861, this act allowed the limited Indian representation in legislative councils, marking the beginning of constitutional development under the British rule. However, the powers of the Indian members remained largely advisory only. So you could see that there is participation of Indians, but actively speaking, they were not having any role in decision-making area. In 1875, the formation of Arya Samaj, another important socio-religious movement that happened in our country, the formation of Arya Samaj, founded by Swami Dayananda Saraswati. The Arya Samaj aimed at reforming Hinduism by returning to the authority of the Vedas. It opposed caste discrimination, idol worship, and the social evils, promoting education and women's rights. So many socio-religious developments or upliftment were actually introduced with the formation of Arya Samaj. Okay, 1875. Now 1877, Queen Victoria proclaimed the Empress of India. Queen Victoria was proclaimed as the Empress of India. During the Delhi Darbar of 1877, the Queen Victoria was proclaimed the Empress of India. Very important, Empress of India, formalizing British imperial authority, and this event was marked by grandeur while India was suffering from a severe famine. So during that time, India was going through a severe famine, especially in the Bengal regions, and during that time only this large event happened in Delhi, known as the Delhi Darbar. So there were a lot of criticism against the British rulers during that time period. Then comes 1878, that is the Vernacular Press Act. Okay, this act curbed the freedom of the Indian language press, empowering the government to suppress publications deemed seditious. It led to widespread protest among the Indian intellectuals and was repealed in 1882. So what they did was there were actually magazines or the press which were coming in the vernacular languages, the regional languages and all, but they were not accepting that, because through these regional languages they were able to mobilize the people. They were able to talk about the corruption of the British administration. They can actually organize people to revolt against the British administration. So that is the reason why they curbed the freedom of Indian language press, and they emphasize only on English newspapers. Okay, and there is an important newspaper that all the civil service aspirants follows, that is the Hindu. If you look at the topmost area, you can see that the foundation year of the Hindu also. So just go and check that. Okay. Now 1885, the formation of Indian National Congress, that is the INC, a remarkable event, an event that designed the history of India. That is the formation of Indian National Congress, and its leaders were ultimately the reason behind we getting the freedom, right? So INC was founded in Bombay by A.O. Hume, that is Alan Octavian Hume. He was a retired British civil servant, and around 72 delegates were there. And it was actually happening in a place called Gokul Tejpal Sanskrit College, Bombay. And it became a principal organization of the Indian nationalist movement in the decades that followed. And the first general secretary was A.O. Hume, and the president was W.C. Banerjee, or the Vomesh Chandra Banerjee. Now, 1892, the Indian Councils Act happened. 1892, the Act expanded the legislative councils and allowed limited indirect election to the members. And it was a modest reform that failed to meet Indian aspirations, thus intensifying nationalist demands. So basically, they have shown some involvement of the Indians, or participation of Indians in the lawmaking process. That's it. Now, 1897, plague and Tilak's arrest. Okay, a severe bubonic plague outbreak in Pune led to oppressive British control measures. Bal Gangadhar Tilak criticized the government and was arrested for sedition, emerging as a radical nationalist leader. So you could see that Bal Gangadhar Tilak as a leader emerged with this particular arrest. Then 1899, Lord Curzon appointed as Viceroy. Why we are mentioning about the appointment of Lord Curzon? Because he was a very controversial person. Okay, Lord Curzon's tenure marked the increasing British centralization and imperialism, including controversial decisions like the partition of Bengal in 1905. He also focused on administrative efficiency, education, and archaeology. So, Lord Curzon has come up with various initiatives that hamper the peace in India. So, one such event was the partition of Bengal in 1905. That is why we are mentioning about the appointment of that person as the viceroy in our country. Now, 1905 partition of Bengal, what was it? So the British partitioned Bengal for administrative convenience. That is, they're saying, their side of the story is for administrative convenience. But actually, they were aiming at a religious, division. That is the communal division. Okay, so as Hindus and Muslims, and this led to this Swadeshi movement and a surge in nationalist sentiments. Okay, so Swadeshi movement were followed by the partition of Bengal. So it was actually against the partition of Bengal only, Swadeshi movement. Now, another major important event happened during this time period, that is the 1907 Surat split. Surat split is actually happening in the Congress, because after the formation of the Congress, you could see that there were two factions emerged. One is moderates, who were only focusing on the peaceful activities, and another one is the extremists. They were not looking at the means; they were only looking at the ends. Okay, somehow they want to get freedom. That's it. Okay, so they follow violence, or they were really aggressive in nature. So they were conflicted, and this was ultimately ended up in the Surat split, where extremists were thrown out of the Indian National Congress. That was happening in the year 1907. So some of the extremist leaders were Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, then Lala Lajpat Rai, and Aurobindo Ghosh. On the other side, if you look at the moderate leaders, you could see Gopal Krishna Gokhale, then Dadabhai Nauroji was there, then Surendranath Banerjee was there. So many other leaders were there. Firoz Shah Mehta, all are actually the moderate leaders. Now, another major incident that happened was in 1911, that is the annulment of the partition of Bengal and the capital shift to Delhi. Due to mass protests, the British reversed the partition of Bengal in 1911. So there were massive protests against it. And in the same year, the capital of British India was shifted from Calcutta to Delhi to reinforce control over the subcontinent's heartland. Okay, so capital was shifted to Delhi, then the annulment of the partition of Bengal, 1911. 1915, major incident happened, that is none other than the return of Mahatma Gandhi to India. Gandhi returned from South Africa and soon became a central figure in India's freedom struggle. And he introduced the philosophy of non-violence and mass civil disobedience as a tool against the British rule. And after he came here, he actually was successful in some of the initiatives he has done. One is Champaran agitation, then Ahmedabad mill strike, and Kheda Satyagraha. So he was successful in that. And then another major incident was happening in 1919, that is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the Montagu Chelmsford reforms. The British troops under the General Reginald Dyer killed hundreds of unarmed civilians gathered in Amritsar, leading to national outrage. Okay, they were actually gathered in Jallianwala Bagh only. So that was actually a park. In the same year, Montagu Chelmsford reforms were introduced, and they introduced limited self-governance but failed to satisfy the Indian aspirations. Okay. So many acts or legislations were passed during this time period. In 1909, Minto-Morley reforms were passed. 1909, Minto-Morley reforms were passed. In 1919, Montagu-Chelmsford reforms were passed. So this Jallianwala Bagh massacre was actually a trigger for everyone to fight against the Britishers. So everybody going against the Britishers, because that was such a brutal activity or a brutal incident that happened in the history of India. Okay. Now, following this, you could see that non-cooperation movement was launched. It was actually launched by Mahatma Gandhi in the year 1920, and this movement urged Indians to boycott British institutions and goods. It marked the first mass-scale mobilization of Indians under the unified national movement. So people from all walks of life, they joined together to fight against the atrocities of the Britishers. So 1920. Now, in 1922, an incident happened, that is the Chauri Chaura incident, and it actually led to the withdrawal of non-cooperation movement. A violent clash in Chauri Chaura, where protesters killed police officers, prompted Gandhi to call off the non-cooperation movement. He believed violence undermined the moral basis of the struggle. So that was the reason. So till then, he was following a very non-violent strike. But with this particular incident, the philosophy, the moral of the entire movement was actually gone. That is the reason why he withdrew the non-cooperation movement. In 1927, Simon Commission came. The Simon Commission was actually set up by the British to suggest certain constitutional reforms. Okay, it was actually listed in the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms in 1919. After 10 years, they have clearly mentioned that after 10 years, a commission should be formed, but before that itself, they have actually formed the commission. But the problem with this commission was it was actually a all British member commission only. No Indians were there in this particular commission. So its arrival in India was met with nationwide protest and the slogan, Simon, go back. Simon, go back. In this particular, anti-Simon Commission march only, Lala Lajpat Rai was killed. Okay, in a lathi charge, he was actually killed. So in 1929, the declaration of Purna Swaraj happened. Declaration of Purna Swaraj. At the Lahore session of the International Congress, a full independence, that is the Purna Swaraj. We have declared that. Till then, we were talking about dominion status, we were talking about limited governance and everything. But now we are only looking at the Purna Swaraj, that is the full independence. Okay, it was declared as an ultimate goal, and 26 January 1930 was observed as an Independence Day across the country. 26 January 1930. So after 20 years, we actually celebrated our Republic Day, 26 January 1950. Then 1930 to 1934 was a time period for civil disobedience movement, where we launched a historic Salt March, Dandi March. Okay, this movement involved defying the colonial laws, especially the salt tax. It marked another major phase of mass mobilization against the British rule. Okay, so that was the civil disobedience movement, NCM and CDM. Now, NCM is non-cooperation movement. Now, 1935, the Government of India Act 1935 came into being, and it actually came up with various provisions. Okay, the Act provided for provincial autonomy and proposed a federal structure. Though significant, it still retained British supremacy and was seen as an inadequate by the Indian leaders. But on the other hand, you will also see that majority of the provisions we have adopted into our constitution, many we have adopted from the Government of India Act of 1935. So that is a very significant act for us. Now 1942, that is the Quit India Act, Quit India movement. So the International Congress launched this mass movement protesting an end to British rule during the World War time period, World War II. The movement was suppressed brutally and with major leaders arrested, but it demonstrated the intensity of Indian demands for freedom. So when it became a leaderless movement, the people were actually acting in their own ways. Okay, but they were having only one goal, that is to send the British people out of this country. So they understood that. They understood the sentiments of the people because of this particular movement. Then 1946, the Cabinet Mission Plan came. That is, the British sent a Cabinet Mission to discuss India's future and propose a constitutional framework. Okay, because we were demanding for a constituent assembly and a constitution for our own, and it actually became fruitful with the Cabinet Mission Plan only. They came up with a detailed plan for making a constitution for our own. Then, though it failed to fully reconcile Congress and Muslim League differences, it laid the groundwork for independence negotiations and the constitution making. 1947, we got independence. And India was partitioned on 15th August 1947. But it was accompanied by a partition creating Pakistan. The division led to widespread communal violence and displacement of millions of people. We know that. Okay, we have discussed all these things in the last video. In 1948, assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. So our father of nation was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu nationalist, a Hindu fanatic who opposed the Gandhi's conciliatory stance towards Muslims. And his death shocked the nation and marked the end of an era. So we know the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi, his ideals, his teachings, his activities, his actions, everything was really, really important. And he was a true leader who actually, lead the entire country in one direction, that is the freedom, and with certain philosophies also. Non-violence was one philosophy, Satyagraha was another philosophy. So he was actually successful in doing that. But towards the end, while seeing the Hindu-Muslim divide, the riots which are going on in different parts of the region, he was really, really sad about this particular situation, because he was not expecting a situation like this. After Britishers were gone, we would be having a really great time. That is what every freedom fighters were actually aspiring for, but it didn't happen. It was actually a division time. It was actually a riot time. It was actually a violent time period happened after we got independence. And during that time, he had done many conciliatory activities, or many decisions he took to resolve this Hindu-Muslim divide and the riots which are going on, which was not acceptable for the Hindu fanatic like Nathuram Godse, and that ended up in the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. In 1950, it's very important year for us because the adoption of the Indian Constitution. On 26 January 1950, India became a republic with the adoption of its constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar played a pivotal role in framing the constitution, and that established India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Okay, so during that time, it was not sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. It was only sovereign, democratic republic. Later, it was added, that is, socialist and secular were added to our constitution through an amendment. So, details regarding our constitution and the timeline is already discussed in another video. So, please go through it. You will get a clear idea about it. So, I hope this session was useful for you, because we tried to cover almost every important events that happened during the time period, especially the modern Indian time period after the formation of the East India Company. So I hope it was useful for you. Please go through it again and again, understand the timeline. Getting an understanding about the timeline will definitely help you in your examination, especially in writing mains and also in solving many questions in the prelims question papers. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you for your patient listening. If you like the video, please do share it with your friends.